Brhad Bhagavatamrita, Part 2. But before we go to chapter 5, I want to read the fruit of some little research. There was in chapter 4, text 228. Whoops, it's upstairs. Yes, please. It's in the same place where the other one was. Chapter 4, text 239, 239, there was a reference from Vamsa, where Dwaraka is actually a Mathura sub-district. I'll read. Translation for 2.4.39. Far from here lies Ayodhya, the splendid city of Raghupati, the divine master of the Raghu dynasty, and beyond that shines the city of Dwarka, dear to the divine master of the Yadus. Dwaraka resembles the blessed and charming Mathura. It resembles the blessed and charming Mathura. Go to that Dwaraka and worship with your eyes your beloved Lord. Commentary. Above all the other Vaikuntha planets are the special abodes of Lord Ramachandra and Lord Krishna. Since Gopakumar is somewhat familiar with Mathura on earth, Narada describes Dwaraka as being similar. And then this is the sentence. As affirmed by Vikadru in Sri Harivamsa, Dwaraka is actually a Mathura sub-district. And the residents of Dwaraka are mostly Yadavas from Mathura city. So when Gopakumar achieved Dwaraka above Vaikuntha, in effect, he will be attaining Mathura. So that's 2.4.239. And Adi Shakti was successful in finding both the interesting translation of Harivamsa, and even better than that is a proper translation of Harivamsa from Brhad Bhagavatamrita 1.4.90 through 91. 1.4.90 through 91. Translation. Never in Ayodhya did the Lord disclose what he now reveals in the district of Mathura, known as Dwaraka, countless varieties of supreme opulence and sweetness, one after another, which Brahma, Rudra, and other demigods can hardly fathom. These glories expand the love of his devotees. Commentary. As Hanuman looks forward to the inestimable benefit he and Narada will achieve in Dwaraka, he reaches the peak of eagerness. Paragraph. During the ancient time, when the Madhu demon ruled Mathura, that kingdom extended all the way to the Western Ocean and included the region of Dwaraka. Sri Harivamsa confirms this in the words of Madhu himself, spoken to the son-in-law of Vikadru. And it gives the long Sanskrit, 5 verses. And here's the translation, Gopi's translation from the commentary. Welcome, dear boy Haryashva. I am happy to see you. Let me give you this, my entire kingdom, except for the Madhuvan forest. please agree to live here and rule the splendid kingdom, graced by the shores of the ocean. It is rich with cows and peopled mostly by Abhira cowherds. During your stay here in the district of Saurashtra, there will come to be a great mountain fortress fit for the residence of kings and unequaled by any other royal estate. Your vast kingdom will be called Anarta. Anarta, unquote. Paragraph. Sometimes, of course, the land of Mathura is measured as being smaller. In the Varaha Purana 151.1, for example, we hear the Supreme Lord refer to, quote, my district of Mathura extending 24 yojanas, and gives the Sanskrit. The smaller Mathura Mandala is the area marked by the footprints of Sri Nandanandana, who frequently wanders and plays there tending his cows. Paragraph. The supreme opulences of the personality of Godhead are manifested in Dwarka because Dwarka is part of the greater Mathura. So, glorification of Dwarka is also, in effect, glorification of Mathura. So all of that was the fruit of some research to find out what is this, as affirmed by Vikadru in Sri Harivamsa. Dwarka is actually a Mathura sub-district. That's commentary from 2.4.39. And I'm going to read the other Sri Harivamsa reference. It's from 2.4.228. One moment while I find the page. 2.4.228 reads, this is from the commentary. The greatness of God is seen most fully when he becomes subordinate to his servants. In such intimate dealings, the Lord reveals his most special qualities, like his unselfish efforts to give happiness to his devotees. This aspect of his personality attracts the admiration of pure Vaishnavas, even when it seems to contradict such features of his absolute status as his eternal self-satisfaction, his effortless acquisition of whatever he might desire, his supreme mastery of the powers of mystic yoga, and so on. One may learn more about this topic by studying such pastimes of Krishna as he destroyed the pride of Satyabhama, as told in Sri Harivamsa and other devotional scriptures. So Sri Harivamsa has a really big section, and it's all connected to Krishna's in the heavenly realm, and he's given one parijata flower. He turns to Rukmini, hands the flower to Rukmini, asks her to accept it. She's very happy. He says, put it in your hair. This is in Sri Harivamsa. Put it in your hair. And then there's, it's effulgent at night, and it gives fragrance for miles, and it never withers. And, it's all these qualities of the parijata flower that was received by Rukmini. And when they go back to Dwarka, Satyabhama has pouts. And she says things that are elaborately discussed, including in this research that Adi Shakti did, in Ujjwala Nilamani, something very similar to the language that we hear in the talk between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy. of the stages of perfection. And there, he describes, Ramananda Roy describes, as Ujjwal and Nilamani describes, jealous anger. Jealous anger. Now, wait a minute. Is there jealousy in the spiritual world? And is there anger in the spiritual world? What's going on? And it's an ecstasy. And it's not the jealous anger of this world. So what is it? It's an ecstasy. And he defeats the pride because she now feels jealous anger. And then there's all kinds of nice description that Krishna enjoys. Why? There's a question in the commentary. Why does Krishna do this? He enjoys the conjugal relation of his queens and sometimes the gopis to incite emotion that connects them more strongly to him. Although it may look otherwise, he enjoys stirring those transcendental emotions. So it's not only in Braja, in this case it's Satyabhama, but it's the jealous anger. And there's other kinds of anger, and there's other kinds of jealousy and so forth. So that's that reference. And if we come across some other ones, I think we did come across some other ones, I'll see what can be done to research them. Just to, churn the topic and understand what's being expressed. Okay. So here we are, chapter 5, starting with text 90. And the Gokula of the Mathura district within the material world is again so supremely great that no one can properly describe its astonishing glories. Commentary: Gokula's direct expansion, Goloka's direct expansion on earth is also greater than Vaikuntha. 91. Please listen, dear friend. My unsteady tongue is itching to speak. I shall now uncover a jewel I've long kept stored in the treasure chest of my heart. Ooh. Commentary: Narada considers his tongue too bold, but in fact, such eagerness to glorify Krishna is an admirable quality in him or anyone else. Narada, in any case, cannot check his tongue from disclosing more, and so he is going to describe something he has kept hidden in his heart for a long time. He has not discussed this with anyone before. So here we go. Everybody likes secrets, right? It's a secret. 92. When the personality of Godhead Krishna, Lord of Goloka, wants to enjoy his various pastimes of the highest pure love, at the end of a certain Dwapara Yuga, he descends to the material world. In that special place, he descends complete with all his partial expansions. Commentary: beginning with this verse and continuing through 172, that's 80 verses, Narada now describes the most confidential glories of Boma Vrindavan, Goloka's manifestation on earth. To prepare the grounds for establishing these glories in text 92 through 101, he first demonstrates the super excellence of the Lord in that abode. Paragraph. The current verse explains why and when Lord Golokanath appears on earth in Mathura Gokula. The reason he descends is to satisfy his own desires, semicolon. He is eager to taste the pleasures of supercharged prema. And the time he descends is during the final earth years of Dwapara Yuga, the age that from its dawn to its dusk lasts 2,400 for 100 years of the demigods, But as we know from authoritative scripture, Krishna comes to earth not at the end of every Dwapara Yuga, but only during the 28th Dwapara Yuga of the 7th Manvantar in the day of Brahma, 93-94. Though the Lord's personal expansions assume many different appearances, the Lord is one with them all. And that Lord suddenly abandons Vaikuntha and his other abodes. He abandons his things and his people of those abodes and his own supreme power. And he leaves far behind his consort and servants like us, who are exclusively devoted to him and have no other shelter, neglecting us all. He goes to the material world. Commentary. All the expansions of Vishnu are included within the original Godhead Krishna. Thus, when Krishna descends to Mathura Gokula in the material world, he takes all his expansions with him. They are not different from him, yet each of them also has his own individual identity. Paragraph. As indicated by the word adikam and so on, in the phrase Vaikuntha Lokadikam, when Krishna comes to earth, he leaves aside all his other abodes from Indra's heaven up to Vaikuntha. He abandons his paraphernalia of those abodes, his ornaments, palaces, weapons, thrones, and as indicated by the second and so on in the phrase Tantra Tya Parichadanin. He also leaves behind his servants and attendants. He loses interest in his innate powers, like self-satisfaction, renunciation, and self-satisfied renunciation, and puts them aside also. He even neglects the goddess Mahalakshmi and his eternal associates, not inviting them to accompany him, even though they are exclusively devoted to him. 95. To enjoy happiness unattainable in any other company, he sports freely in the Braja of Sri Mathura with its residents who have natures exactly suited to his own. Commentary. The purpose of Krishna's descent was mentioned in text 92 as his, quote, wanting to enjoy his various pastimes of the highest pure love. Tat tan mahaprema vihara kamaha. This is further elaborated upon in the current verse. The devotees of Brajabhumi are able to satisfy Krishna by joining him in his favorite pastimes. Thus, the earthly Gokula sometimes displays perfections not found even in Goloka, in the spiritual sky. 96. By an abundance of his mercy, never disclosed before, he then becomes directly visible to the people of the universe who have the exceptional good fortune of firm devotion for him. 97. And so it is that sometimes the Lord of Vaikuntha is not seen in Vaikuntha. You have found this out for yourself. Commentary. Sometimes Lord Narayana sneaks away from his abode to visit the material world, as Gopakumar discovered when staying in Vaikuntha. 98. Sages concerned with the history of various worlds, therefore, describe Lord Krishna in different ways. Some say he is the master Vaikuntha, and others, the thousand-headed Purusha. 99-100. Some sages think that the Lord who has descended in Mathura city is Lord Narayan, the friend of Nara. Others think of him, Lord Vishnu, and yet others, Lord Keshava, who lies in the ocean of milk. Thus, the followers of progressive Vedic culture describe Krishna's descent each in accord with his own understanding from, from what they have ascertained about the Lord's supremacy and his sweetness and other qualities. Commentary. The great sages of the Vedic culture are all individuals, each with his own spiritual realizations and opinions, which are reflected in the mantras of the Vedas. In the Vedic hymns, we hear the sages' various understandings of who Krishna is, in accordance with such statements as Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. Some think that it is the Lord of Vaikuntha who incarnates in Mathura city. Others quote Sahasrashirsha Brahma Lokadishtataram. The Lord with thousands of heads rules over the planet of Brahma, and identify Krishna with the thousand-headed form of Lord Vishnu. That's a form of Vishnu on Brahmaloka. Still others, following their reading of a verse from the fourth canto of the Bhagavatam 4.159, consider Krishna an incarnation of Narayan, the sons of Dharma and Murti. He gives the Sanskrit. Tva imau vai bhagavato harir angshab ihagatau bara vyayaya cha bhuvaha krishnau yadukuru dvahau. These two partial expansions of Nara and Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, have now appeared in the dynasties of Yadu and Kuru in the forms of Krishna and Arjuna to mitigate the burden of the world, unquote. Yet other sages say that Krishna is the same Lord Keshava who lies on the ocean of milk. They cite as evidence for their understanding the words of Bhagavatam 2.7.26, Siddha Krishna Keshaha, which some commentators explain to mean that Lord Kshirodakshai Vishnu created Balaram and Krishna from two strands of his own hair, one white, Sita, and the other black, Krishna. Lord Kshirodakshai Vishnu is called Keshava because his hair is especially beautiful. And the Vishnu Purana states more explicitly, Uja Hara Tamaha Tamana Keshau Sita Krishnau Maha Mune. O great sage, the Lord pulled out two of his own hairs, one white and one black. Srila Rupa Goswami, however, in his Laghu Bhagavatamrita, gives the reference, gives the definitive understanding of these passages about the hairs. He says that Krishna has beautiful black hair, Krishna Kesha, which is always nicely combed, Sita, or Sita, not with a long I, Sita. And since the Lord has an eternally youthful form, he never appears old enough to have white hairs. Rupa Goswami Ki Jai. Paragraph. Each sage, having focused his attention on a particular aspect of the Supreme Lord's glories, has realized a particular form of the Lord in meditation. So the sages naturally describe as having descended to earth as Krishna, the particular form of the Lord they have realized. Since all the expansions of Godhead, with their individual features, are included within Krishna, technically, there is no fault in saying that one of Krishna's expansions has come to earth and become Krishna. In effect, however, what all this indicates is that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and all other forms of God emanate from him. Last paragraph for this verse. One might ask how these all-knowing sages can have so many different opinions about Krishna's identity. This is not difficult to explain. The sages speak according to their own realizations, and authorities discuss whichever aspect of the Supreme Lord they understand. But shouldn't such knowers of the revealed scriptures be able to understand the full reality as it is? Yes, but they are Aryas, which can be understood to mean men of simple intelligence, quote unquote. The subtle logic that analyzes the identity of Krishna is too difficult for them to comprehend. Or, taking the idea of simplicity a different way, the sages know very well the truth about Krishna, but they express their views as they do because they assume, thinking simply, that glorifying any one of the Lord's incarnations glorifies all his incarnations. Like, this is some delicate topics that get people spun out. "101. But in truth, the divine Lord of Goloka eternally adorns his own abode upon the earth, enjoying his own unique pastimes." Commentary. After mentioning several other opinions about Krishna's appearance on earth, Narada now states his own. 102. No one in this house is an outsider. Uddhava is very dear to the residents of Braja, and you are from Braja yourself. Therefore, I can say something confidential. Commentary. In the previous verse, Narada refers to the glories of the Lord of Goloka, and in the next verse, he begins elaborating on the supreme opulence of the Lord displayed there. In text 88, we're at 102. In text 88, Narada mentioned this topic briefly when he said, "Indeed, that world, I think, displays the complete essence of the Lord Hari's most confidential godhood," unquote. Narada can speak freely in Uddhava's house because everyone present is fit to hear such topics. Everyone sitting there has the right kind of special love for the personality of Godhead. Here we go. 103. In that Brajabhumi, the Lord's opulences have visibly achieved their final perfection, and so also, in many various ways, have his mercy, his beauty, the sweetness of all his excellent qualities, the splendor of his pastimes, and his subservience to his devotees. 104. The pastures of Nanda Maharaj, unique in their features, have become the land in which the Lord's highest opulence personally sports, the opulence whose mere sidelong glance creates all the glories of the material world, and who serves as mistress of the household for the Lord of Vaikuntha. Commentary. Narada now begins to explain in detail each feature of Krishna's glories in Gokula. In this verse and the next, Narada talks about Krishna's godly opulence. So attractive is the land of Braja, where the Gopas, headed by Nanda, graze their cows, that the supreme goddess of fortune, Mahalakshmi, has chosen it as the place of her pastimes, even though Her mere sidelong glance empowers the great controllers of the universe, beginning with Brahma and Rudra. The gentle charms of Braja attract her. I'm going to take something from my throat. We're kind of like we've been pumped up to feel like, hey, we're being let in on a very special secret that only the most elevated souls get to hear behind closed doors. And Sanatana Goswami is revealing it to the world. Even though Mahalakshmi's mere sidelong glance empowers the great controllers of the universe, beginning with Brahma and Rudra, the gentle charms of Braja attract her. And if Gokula's opulences enchant Mahalakshmi, who enchants everyone in the material world, then those opulences must be greater than those of Brahma, Rudra, and all the demigods. Moreover, since the same Mahalakshmi who comes to Braja on earth is also the wife of the Lord of Vaikuntha, the opulences of Braja must be even greater than those of Vaikuntha. Paragraph. In Vaikuntha, Lakshmi has many responsibilities in the household of Lord Narayana. But in Braja, she is free to enjoy herself all the time. So the opulences of Lakshmi are most fully manifest in Braja. As Shukadev Goswami describes in 10th Canto, Chapter 5, 18, quote, "O Maharaj Parikshit, the home of Nanda Maharaj is eternally the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his transcendental qualities, and is therefore always naturally endowed with the opulence of all wealth. Yet, beginning from Lord Krishna's appearance there, it became the place for the pastimes of the goddess of fortune." Unquote. That's Shukadev to Maharaj Parikshit, Chapter 5, Canto 10. Text 105. In the land of Braja, any tree with any of its parts can fulfill all the desires of anyone who asks. Yet, the Lord does not always display his opulences in Braja because that might obstruct the enjoyment of his pastimes. Commentary. As a simple example of how opulent is the land of Braja, even the trees there can satisfy all desires with a single fruit, a single flower, or any part of their bodies. In other words, a person who approaches those trees has his life's ambitions fulfilled. This is described in Bhagavatam 10:22-34 by the personality of Godhead himself. Patra pushpa pala chaya mula vakala darabhi gandha niryasa basmasti tokmai kamam vitanvate. These trees, this is chapter 22, these trees fulfill one's desires with their leaves, flowers, and fruits, their shade, roots, bark, and wood, and also with their fragrant sap, ashes, pulp, and shoots. Paragraph. If even the trees of Braja display such wonderful powers, how could the opulences of Braja be kept secret? And how then could Braja be a suitable place for the Supreme Lord to enjoy as an ordinary person? Braja is suitable because the Lord reveals those opulences only in select instances when they are useful for his purposes. If there is no special need for them, he keeps them hidden. Thus, the opulence of Godhead, opulences of Godhead, are only occasionally seen in Braja, though the Lord's charming pastimes, as the darling of the cowherds, are always visibly expanding. 106. Simply because Putana, the child-killing demoness, disguised herself as a respectable person, the Lord bestowed upon her the destination of being his mother. By similar pastimes, he also gave liberation to her family members, Agasura and others, even though they were enemies of the pious devotees. Commentary. In these pastimes, Krishna demonstrates the extent of his kindness. Putana dressed herself very nicely so that Yashoda and the other ladies of Braja would accept her as one of them, a cultured Vaishnav. This was enough to satisfy Krishna, who, even though Putana was a most wicked demon, arranged for her to achieve an auspicious destination equal to that of Mother Yashoda. Uddhava therefore declared in Bhagavatam, celebrated verse, Aho Bhakiyam Stanakala Kutam. Alas, how shall I take shelter of anyone more merciful than him who granted the position of mother to a she-demon Putana, although she was unfaithful, and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast, unquote. Not only Putana, but also many of her demon friends and relatives, such as Agabaka and Kamsa, were liberated simply by being drawn to Krishna's supremely charming childhood pastimes. As described by Lord Brahma in his prayers to Krishna, 10:14:35, you have already arranged to give yourself to Putana and her family members in exchange for her disguising herself as a devotee. So what is left for you to give to these devotees of Vrindavan, whose homes, wealth, friend, dear relations, bodies, children, and very lives and hearts are all dedicated only to you? 107 has a long purport. This will be the last for this morning. He allowed his belly to be tied to the base of a grinding mortar with ropes for tying cows. And to enliven the women of Raja, he danced, entertained them in other ways, and carried out their orders. Commentary. In text 103, when Narada listed Krishna's excellences in Brajabhumi, he placed Krishna's subservience to his devotees last, but here he takes the opportunity to elaborate on this topic out of sequence, since it closely bears on the topic of Krishna's mercy. When Mother Yashoda wanted to punish Krishna by tying him up, she joined all the ropes available, including the ones used for tying the cows at milking. But still she could not make a rope long enough to bind her son. Translation 10.9.17. Thus, Mother Yashoda joined whatever ropes were available in the household, but still she failed in her attempt to bind Krishna. Mother Yashoda's friends, the elder gopis in the neighborhood, were smiling and enjoying the fun. Similarly, Mother Yashoda, although laboring in that way, was also smiling. All of them were struck with wonder. Finally, Krishna agreed to let himself be tied to the same grinding mortar he had climbed on to steal butter. Quote, because of Mother Yashoda's hard labor, her whole body became covered with perspiration, and the flowers and comb were falling from her hair. When child Krishna saw his mother thus fatigued, he became merciful to her and agreed to be bound. Oh, Maharaj Parikshit, this entire universe with its great exalted demigods, like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Lord Indra, is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yet the Supreme Lord has one special transcendental attribute. He comes under the control of his devotees. This was now exhibited by Krishna in this pastime. Paragraph. The ladies of Vraja delighted in witnessing these pastimes, and Krishna further encouraged their love for him by performing antics for their pleasure and by submitting to their commands. This too, Shukadeva Goswami describes, quote, the gopis would say, if you dance, my dear Krishna, then I shall give you half a sweetmeat. Saying these words, or by clapping their hands, all the gopis encouraged Krishna in different ways. At such times, although he was the supremely powerful personality of Godhead, he would smile and dance according to their desire, as if he were a wooden doll in their hands. Sometimes he would sing very loudly at their bidding. In this way, Krishna came completely under the control of the gopis. Another example, they're all in a series. Sometimes Mother Yashoda and her gopi friends would tell Krishna, bring this article or bring that article. Sometimes they would order Krishna to bring a wooden plank, wooden shoes, or a wooden measuring pot. And Krishna, when thus ordered by the mothers, would try to bring them. Sometimes, however, as if unable to raise these things, he would touch them and stand there. Just to invite the pleasure of his relatives, he would strike his body with his arms and show that he had sufficient strength. And the final verse, to pure devotees throughout the world who could understand his activities, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna exhibited how much he can be subdued by his devotees, his servants. In this way, he increased the pleasure of the Vrajavasis by his childhood past activities. Final paragraph. By these pastimes, Lord Krishna sent a clear message to the Gyanis who think they know him very well as the absolute truth. Quote, to achieve me through the process of knowledge is not at all easy. Only by bhakti am I readily obtained. And for this morning, and tomorrow is the auspicious 108. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.